Hi, it's Paul here, and this is a quick overview on IoT in a business context. Sometimes I feel it can feel a little bit abstract, but it's actually something most of us already understand on a day to day basis. This explainer video shows how IoT moves from data to decisions to the all important value creation. I hope you find this of value. So, what I'm drawing is a day to day piece of tech that a lot of us use. It is an IoT device and deployment, but it's on a B2C perspective. So it starts with measurements that we take generally on the wrist from your smartwatch, physical measurements from an electronic transducer, it could be steps, heart rate, blood oxygen levels, skin temperature, to name but a few. So that information is taken from an analog sensor, is converted into a digital signal that is stored temporarily and visualized on your smartwatch in the first instance. Must make a declaration here at this point. There's some very high level headings within this slide, within this presentation. If we double click on any of these, there's a lot of detail, technical, commercial, operational details that need to be attended to if you're embarking upon any new IoT deployment project. An analogy I use is if you're driving in your car, you want to take a journey in your car, you jump into the car, you press the button, you turn the key, you drive from point A to point B. There's a whole heap of history, tech, commercials, operations that's gone in to make that journey super easy and almost invisible in terms of how that journey has actually happened. And why shouldn't it be? And that's really a good benchmark and aspiration for any good IoT deployment. We're trying to get you to your data and to your insights as quickly and as painlessly as possible. But that being said, it shouldn't be underestimated what goes in to make that happen. That journey in that car, as an analogy, as easy as that, that's where we want to be. It doesn't happen easily. So we jump into the value, and I've tried to sequence this on the platform level, the sequence of the data and the value that we can extract from that data. We get quite giddy, I feel sometimes, around the benefits of AI and ML. And I think sometimes that's at the expense of actually just raw measurements taken in a consistent, meaningful way. If you were to take manual temperature measurements, right, I'm no doctor or medical practitioner, it's going to be pretty infrequent, pretty inconsistent, once a day, once an hour. When we're taking measurements via an IoT solution, we're taking it very consistently, very accurately, and we're building up patterns and characteristics. We enable those patterns and characteristics to be visualized in a number of different mediums. There's a lot of blind spots of stuff that can happen if we're taking measurements once a day, for instance. A lot of things can happen in between those measurement points, and we really want to pick up on those. We want to use tech in a smart and intelligent way. So we then move on to calculated measurements, and a good example of that would be HRVs, heart rate variability. In the smartwatch instance, we're taking the heart rate measurements in terms of time. Is it leading or is it lagging what you expect? And we're deriving insights from that through the use of tech, through the use of calculated measurements on the platform. And we're going to create some insights for you as a user. You can see, and you can probably get some prompts from your app and your smartphone around what you should be doing. Should you be seeking medical guidance? Should you be doing this? Should you be doing that? Okay, so that's an insight from a calculated measurement as an example. The presentation of the data there, probably the primary user of this data is going to be you. So it's going to be very much a one-to-one type basis. You're probably not interested as a user that it's 21 milliseconds over the average rate. You're probably more interested in what does that actually mean and what is the trend and the pattern, what are the recommendations and the next steps you should be taken. So presentation of data is another really good indicator of the value that you can extract, and it needs to be done in an intelligent and well engineered way. Alerts, I'll jump on an obvious one here in the smartwatch instance, which would be heart rate. If your heart rate is going above a certain level, You probably don't want to be logging into your your smartphone and smart device, monitoring it manually. We want to use tech in a smart and intelligent way. So we can generate alerts if your heart rate goes above whatever the level is that you shouldn't be going above. So the tech is working for you 24/7. It doesn't sleep. Okay, so you can generate those alerts in a smart and intelligent way to add value for you. And then we get up to the data sets for experts. I think you could look at this in two different ways. You've got the one-to-one piece. It could be somebody like a doctor or a cardiologist wants to look at your heart rate from an ECG from your phone. I know some phones have ECG functions. It helps them get to a quicker triage of what should be the next steps based upon the data that you've been taking consistently for long periods of time or short periods of time, but very consistent data sets. So that can help on a one-to-one basis. And then it goes on to a wider level, onto a macro sort of analytical level. How would that, of course, assuming the permissions are there, but how would that look over populations of all of the smartwatch users and the demographics and all of that sort of insights that you can gain from a wider data set? So what we want to do now is draw that into a business type application. It's no coincidence. My background is from industrial, it's from the built environment and managed property background. These are very typical measurements that we would take. Again, like the smartwatch scenario and analogy above, we're taking physical measurements in a very consistent way. They need to be taken accurately. If they're not taken accurately, it doesn't matter how good your algorithms are and your AI and your MLs are on the right hand side of this graphic. If your $10 sensor isn't given good, accurate measurements and it's fit for purpose in the environment that's going to be used, your algorithms will be worthless and they won't work. Sensors come in lots of different shapes and sizes. This is the first of a series of posts that I will be doing and posting. We will double click onto each of these areas in more detail. So yeah, feel free to stay tuned on those up and coming posts. Communications mediums, yes, there's lots of different available communications mediums here. LoRaWAN, Ethernet, Wi-Fi, Zigbee, Z-Wave, proprietary is one. And they need to be selected based upon the use case. Again, like the analogy of the car, it needs to work. And if you have issues with regards to deployments of these sensors because of whatever dynamics it is within the built environment or the industrial application you're using, doesn't make sense, and you're getting operational black spots in communications, again, it doesn't matter how good your ML and your AI is. It won't matter because you've not got robust deliverable data. Then we're up to the platform, and a good example of raw measurements here would be temperature measurements and humidity measurements. Okay, we might be deploying these sensors into an archive or to a social housing deployment. In an archive scenario, you might want to, or you would be very interested to know if conditions are under spec for temperature or over spec for temperature that could be conducive to damage to your archives or to your assets. If you're relying on a historic measurement from a manual measurement or somebody looking at a temperature gauge on a wall or a humidity gauge, again, you're taking pretty inconsistent readings there, and it would create large blind spots and uplifted risk. Okay, so you want to try and avoid that, and that's a great use case for IoT. In a social housing dwelling, and I'll move on to calculated measurements here, you may be very interested in the development of mold, right? So we would want to monitor in a consistent way via a calculated measurement dew point, as an example. If dew point is compromised, condensation can form, which is conducive to mold growth, which is obviously compromising for the tenant or the homeowner. So we want to avoid that. And it's a really good example of tech and building up characteristics. Again, over time, we can start to spot climatic conditions, times of years, tenant behavior, maybe over occupancy could be factors that we can pick up from consistent measurements taking over extended periods of time. Presentation of the data is super important. We might be presenting data in a real-time format to a CFO, to a property manager, a facility manager, or a technician. All of those considerations need to be taken into account. We need to take those calculated measurements in an intelligent way and those raw measurements and present them in an efficient way. So as soon as you log into the system, you're seeing exactly what you need to see. Alerts, again, like the scenario in the smartwatch scenario, we're eliminating blind spots. So if you are generating alerts when humidities and dew points are being compromised, you might want to take measures to stabilize those climatic conditions, or alert the homeowner to open a window or do something in terms of their heating patterns to stabilize those environments, minimize risk. So we are now onto the data sets for experts, and this is where it gets really exciting with advancements in AI in conjunction with sector experts and all of the harvested data that we've shown on these slides. This really is the tip of the pyramid in terms of bringing all of this amazing asset data together. We're building it on top of the raw measurements and the calculated measurements and those value added parts of the IoT solutions. But this really is the tip of the pyramid now, where we can leverage AI to proactively predict times when assets may be compromised. Okay, so you can get ahead of business interruption, and you can intelligently put countermeasures in place to not eliminate, but manage and mitigate those risks within your asset base. And of course, save costs as well. There's a huge part to the commercial dynamics of IoT deployments. So as an organization, the rewards can be super high and super compelling. You could be sat on a proverbial oil field of data. We will cover that in following articles. So thanks for taking the time. Really appreciate it. Hope this was of use. If it's relevant to what you're working on, feel free to reach out. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you very much.